Hey, what's up DIYers? Mike Boards with the Mike Boards channel. Thank you for watching. We're talking boats today, and we're working on an Alpha 1 Gen 1 Mercruiser outdrive. In today's video, we are going to show you the old trim limit and trim sender switches compared to the brand new ones. Let's take a look. All right, DIYers, downstairs at the Craftsman Workstation. Always busy here at the Craftsman Workstation. As you can see, my mom and dad's jet ski in for the winter. A lot of DIY videos to come. However, on the workbench there, you can see the old and damaged trim limit and trim sender switches, as well as the wiring, and we're going to talk more about that. Let's take a closer look. As we make our way around to the workbench and workstation, hey, if you're into skateboards and want to mount skateboards or build your own skateboards, we'll post links down below in the comment section as well as the description section. Definitely check those out. However, to the workbench, and we've got all the schematics printed out for the jet ski repairs, just like we did for our exact serial number service manual for our Alpha 1 Gen 1 outdrive Mercruiser. And here it is, the old trim limit. As you can see, TL, you can barely make it out right there, trim limit, and that is port side, and on the starboard side is trim sender, and you can barely make out the TS, trim sender, again, starboard side. And what I'll do is reposition the camera and talk more about this wiring. All right, DIYers, with the camera repositioned, I want to give you a close view. Again, port side TL trim limit switch, and on the back side it is greased. I'll talk about that here shortly. But I do want to show you the failure point of our trim limit switch. Not here, but that is badly damaged. As you can see, the wiring is not only broke free from the inner housing or protector, it has become completely corroded, rusted, and separated, as you see there. But here's the failure point. Unfortunately, it broke completely, split right in two at this very point. And as we were looking at it and inspecting it, we noticed upstream inside the hull, a portion of this wiring was zip tied, and because of that, it didn't allow the wire to travel or move freely as we trimmed the outdrive up and down. So because of that, it finally had enough and it snapped at this point, as you see. And the inner portion again is greased. There is a grease fitting or port that you pump grease into the system that greases this portion of both the trim limit switch and trim sender switch. And this inner piece is adjustable. I'm not going to move it right now because it's very greased. However, this portion right here feeds right into your hinge pin. And once it's secured in place, you will then ensure that both of your trim limit and trim sender switches are secured on both ends. And once the outdrive is back on, you will begin the realignment process to ensure that your outdrive is properly aligned. In other words, you want to make sure you align the trim limit and trim sender switches after you install the outdrive back to the boat, because if you don't, well, the outdrive might trim too far down or it might trim too far up, and you don't want that. It could cause damage, especially if you're in drive at full throttle and the outdrive's higher than it should be or lower than it should be, and ultimately putting a lot of stress on your U-joint engine coupler. Long story short, that will basically cause premature failure of the shaft. You don't want that. I'll set that aside. And the TS trim sender, again, on starboard side, nothing different, as you can see. And once you secure these into the hinge pins, you'll notice here and here is a pretty wide gap, and that allows you to rotate it to properly align it with, again, this portion inside the inner hinge pin. And once it's aligned, you've got two Phillips screws, one on this side, one on that side. You will secure them and you will be aligned. And DIYers, for your convenience, down below in the comment section as well as the description section will be a link that shows you how to properly and safely align your trim limit switch and trim sender switch to your outdrive to ensure that you're back to proper manufacturer specifications. In addition, I snipped all these connected to the inboard engine at a mount, and these came off the opposite end of the trim limit, again port side, and fed all the way inside the hull and to the right side of the inboard engine if you're standing inside the boat looking to the back portion of the hull, and fed into connection points that fed directly into your hydraulic reservoir and pump motor. And again, to pull these out during the removal process, I just went ahead and snipped them. Next, the large wiring. And I want to show you two things. Number one, these little things right here. Mercruiser calls these halves, and the original ones are a rubber bushing or halve, and the new ones are plastic. And what happens as you feed this inside the transom and into the hole, that this portion of the wiring feeds inside the hull, and this portion of the wire feeds back out to the trim limit and trim sender switches that are connected to your hinge pin areas. There is a cover that you slide right up on this and secure it with a couple screws. In our case, Alpha 1, Gen 1, we do have 2 screws. I believe Gen 2s and Bravos, you only have 1 screw. However, as you tighten that screw and plate in place and press this portion or these 2 halves together and inside the cavity of the transom, it creates a solid watertight seal at this very point to alleviate any water getting inside the hull when your transom area and outdrive are fully submerged in the water. And again, it breaks in 2, 1 wire for the trim sender, 1 wire for the trim limit, and they feed all the way inboard to their respective connection points. And I'll set this down. I want to talk about the opposite end. And as you can see, I've got 1 orange and 1 white, and all that is electrical tape. And during the removal process, to stay organized and not get goofed up which wire was what, I color coded them. And in addition, you can see a gray string trimmer line on both sides. And as I installed the new trim sender and trim limit wiring, again, color coding to stay organized and not make the mistake of connecting the trim sender to the port side and trim limit to the starboard side. You wouldn't want that. So again, here is the old, damaged, broken, and begging for replacement trim limit and trim sender limit switch kit. And at this point, scrolling above right now is a link to a video that shows us removing these exact wiring and trim limit and trim sender switches and installing our brand new kit. So definitely check that out. You will find that very helpful. And as I mentioned a bit ago, down below in the comment section as well as the description section will be a link to a video that shows you how to properly and safely, again, align your trim limit and trim sender switches after you get the outdrive resecured to the boat. And that's all I want to cover inside. What we'll do now is go out to the boat where I will show you the newly installed and brand new trim limit and trim sender switches as well as all brand new wiring. However, before we go outside to the boat, check this out. This is our cryptocurrency token toolbox, and the symbol is DIY. Definitely check out toolboxtoken.com. We've got an awesome ecosystem underway. I'll set that aside. And DIYers, real quick, one last thing before I go outside. I cleaned up the workstation or workbench, and inside the box of the new trim limit and trim sender switch kit will come with all the instructions to not only remove the old but install the new kit and how to properly align it. And again, we will reference this in that alignment video. To the back of the boat, and as you can see, here's our transom. We got an Alpha 1 Gen 1, and again, our outdrive is fully removed. And we'll come inside, just a quick view of what we've done. We just installed our water hose and tube with new clamp. Also, in previous videos, we installed the new gimbal bearing, and behind that is a gimbal bearing grease seal. We installed a brand new one of those as well. We're just shy of pulling the old shift cable housing and installing a brand new shift cable and housing. And again, there's our water hose. However, the main reason we are here is to show you our brand new trim limit switch, wiring, and trim sender switch. Let's start with the trim limit on the port side. Again, brand new. It says trim limit port. And you've got this protective wrap here on the wiring because when it is positioned inside the transom and everything is put back together, when you're out riding around in the water and making constant movements to this entire outdrive portion, that protective wrap will help protect the inner wires to both your limit switch and your starboard side trim sender wiring. Check that out. Trim sender starboard. And it goes up into a housing in there. Let me get in here, try to give you a good view of it. And there it is right there. And DIYers, for all of you Alpha 1 Gen 1 owners, including ourselves, guess what? If you have not done this project before, you need to know before going into it, you have 2 bolts. You've got a bolt on the bottom and a bolt on top. And in our case, it's 7/16 size. For all of you Alpha 1 Gen 2s as well as Bravo owners, you only have 1 bolt, which is a heck of a lot easier to service when it comes time to removing that cover plate during the project. However, again, for all of you Alpha 1 Gen 1 owners, including ourselves, we've got 2 bolts, and we've talked to many mechanics over the years, and what we've kind of gathered is the designers and engineering teams may have realized that adding 2 bolts made it extremely difficult and inconvenient when it came time to service and replace your trim limit and sender wiring. So as they were designing the Alpha 1 Gen 2s and Bravos, they changed the design to have the cover plate secured by only 1 bolt, and it's on the bottom, which makes it really nice to get to. In addition, you've got the wiring that goes through a white part there, and actually that is split in two as we showed inside at the workbench. And again, the proper name for those is halves. And as you tighten that plate in place, those halves come together and create a seal. And depending on the outdrive you're working on and service manual you are following will depend on whether or not they mention to apply perfect seal or gasket maker to the thread of the bolts. In our case, our service manual did not mention to do that for our exact serial number, so we chose not to. Taking a step back, now let's hop inside the boat and show you the opposite end of the wiring. Inside the boat now, DIYers, here is our 3.0 Mercury inboard engine that feeds our Alpha 1 Gen 1 outdrive. Let's start on the port side, come down below, and here is our hydraulic pump. And feeding to the back side down below, you can see our trim limit wiring, and I've got a zip tied here, and it feeds into a more organized connection of wires right here. You've got a blue and green wire feeding into a fitting, and you've got a purple wire back here that feeds into a second fitting. And for your trim limit switch, again on the exterior portion of the boat, it's on the port side, and on the inside of the boat, if you're looking back at the outdrive, it's also on the port side. And those two connections connect right here. And again, that is your trim limit wiring. Now let's head to the opposite side. Now to the opposite side, and I want to come to the very back, and you can see our trim sender wiring right here. That's where they come through the transom and hull of the boat, right down there. And it feeds up here, in our case, to keep it organized and not allow the wiring to get damaged while the engine's running and we're out and about on the lake having fun. I've wrapped it in an organized manner and attached it to the electrical taped larger wiring harness here. And the trim sender wiring feeds into these little connections as we showed the adapters at the workstation, and feed into this little block and connection point right here. And again, yours may be in a different spot within your engine compartment. However, for the most part, these are pretty standard across the board. So again, I just wanted to show you that. Taking a step back, and DIYers, that is it. Again, that video link that was scrolling above earlier, definitely check that out. We show you the step-by-step process on how to properly and safely replace your trim limit switch and wiring, as well as your trim sender switch and wiring. And in addition to that, that video will help guide you to the video where we show the full adjustment and alignment of both the limit switch and trim sender switch, which we do to alleviate the outdrive from overextending or trimming down or up and causing damage to the system. That would not be good. Again, we hope this helps. Do us a favor, below the video you will see that thumbs up icon. Click on that, like the video, subscribe to the channel. Definitely ring your YouTube bell. That would be very helpful to us. We would really appreciate it. Thanks again for watching.